I was already betrothed. But after an intimate encounter with Wenzhao, I had no choice but to marry him. After we wed, I resented him and ignored him. Even when our only child fell gravely ill, and he begged me to visit the boy, I remained unmoved.
Do you despise me that much, that you still pine for Shen Lingchuan? What if I had been set up that day too?
My obsession was too deep. I wouldn't listen to a word. One day, I was finally taken away by Shen Lingchuan, but I did not find a new beginning. Instead, I was used as a bargaining chip by him.
Gee, do not blame me. For the sake of the empire, I have no choice but to sacrifice you. You are Wenzhao's weakness, so I must strike at you.
I died at the hands of the man I loved. Later, Wenzhao crushed the rebels and avenged me. My soul did not dissipate. I watched his hair turn white overnight. I watched him raise our child alone, and I watched him spend countless nights clutching my old clothes in a daze. When I opened my eyes, Wenzhao was staring at me with pleading eyes.
Heng'er has a fever. He wants to see you.
Wenzhao's face was still as clear and stern as I remembered. I was stunned for a long moment, only then realizing I had been reborn. On this day in my past life, Wenzhao begged me to visit our feverish son.
I beg you, go and see our son.
I refused him. He could finally bear it no longer. His eyes were slightly red. He questioned me.
Do you hate me that much? Are you still pining for Shen Lingchuan? What if that day I was also framed?
Helplessly, I couldn't hear a word of it back then. Anyone who had their reputation ruined, had their engagement broken by their beloved, and became the laughingstock of the city, would be unable to face it calmly. Now, I locked eyes with the man. He stared at me intently, his hands hidden within his wide sleeves, clenched into tight fists. In those few seconds of my silence, Wenzhao swallowed hard, as if trying to regain his dignity.
Heng'er is unconscious, and he keeps calling for you. Otherwise, I wouldn't have come to beg you.
Thinking of my son from my past life, though he was protected by Wenzhao in every way, he ultimately went down a dark path due to his mother's neglect and resentment. In the years after I died, Wenzhao remained a man of few words. After Heng'er grew up, he stole someone else's fiancée. When the girl refused, Heng'er kept her under house arrest. He spent his whole life, but never got what he wanted, collecting my thoughts. I sighed softly. Fine. Wenzhao's deep, pool-like eyes lit up in an instant. He thought he had misheard.
What?
That is right. To him, I despised and ignored him. But in my past life, I was a wandering spirit for most of my existence, my soul always by his side. To me, he was the person I was closest to. I forced a smile onto my face. I said, fine, let's go see Heng'er. Just as I moved a step forward, Wenzhao snapped back to reality. He suddenly reached out and grabbed my shoulders. The next moment, I was pressed against the wooden door by him. His suppressed emotions erupted all at once.
You are being this kind. Are you planning to hurt him again? He is the child you carried for 10 months. He is innocent.
My eyes widened slightly. My thoughts drifted back through the long years. When Heng'er was first born, I only saw him as a mark of shame from that unbearable past. I even refused to look at him for a time, but that was only for a fleeting moment. Back then, I often viewed Heng'er's birth as a stain. The whole city was convinced that I, Tang Qinzhi, on the eve of my wedding, had done something I shouldn't have with someone else. The incident happened to fall on the day of the lotus viewing party. I don't know how I fell into the lotus pond myself. When I regained my senses, I found myself held tightly in Wenzhao's arms. He roared,
Every Yunin get back.
From that day on, those public accusations and all those shameless, vile insults were all poured out upon me. Wenzhao, as the regent, used his power and sharp tongue to suppress the rumors. But as the daughter of a scholarly family, I could never quite overcome my own inner turmoil. In my past life, my heart was trapped in knots. My shoulder hurt from Wenzhao's grip. I frowned. He froze and immediately let go.
If you don't want to, then forget it.
He turned to leave. I tugged at his sleeve. His whole body stiffened. He looked down at the sleeve I was holding. I understand that I cannot make you change right now. I must plan this slowly, living this life once more. I have finally come to understand everything. The events of the past are all like smoke. What lies before me is what truly matters. Thinking of how Heng'er resented me, which led to his paranoid nature, I said urgently, I will go with you. Heng'er is my own flesh and blood too. I was the one who was foolish before. Wenzhao stared fixedly at me, his face calm and unruffled, yet his eyes hid a brewing storm. The man said in a low voice,
If you let Heng'er get hurt, I will lock you away forever.
I did not scream or shout as I once had. Instead, I curled my lips into a smile at Wenzhao. Very well, my husband. Perhaps because the word husband had never passed my lips before. Wenzhao was startled once again. He walked straight ahead, not sparing me another glance. Following behind him, I watched his upright posture and caught a glimpse of a deep red flush on his ears. This regent who held such great power had stumbled in his stride for a brief moment. Little Heng'er. His features looked just like Wenzhao's. The father and son were like they were cast from the same mold. However, Heng'er was still young, with a chubby, round face, extremely endearing. Unlike Wenzhao, whose face seemed to say, keep your distance, I sat by the bed and pulled Heng'er close. In my past life, every time I ignored him, it was also a torment to myself. Ahung, mother is here. I kissed the little one's cheek. He opened his eyes, a pair of bright, dark eyes gazing at me.
Mother, is it really mother? Heng'er must be dreaming. That is the only way I can see my mother.
In an instant, tears streamed down my face. After much effort to calm Heng'er down, Wenzhao took the child from my arms.
He is asleep now. You should go.
I was puzzled. Why was Wenzhao still angry? Stepping out of the room, I finally understood what he was thinking. Wenzhao stood with his hands behind his back, his face cold and stern.
Speak. You took the initiative to hold Heng'er today. Is it because you need something from me, or are you planning to flee the prince's estate? Shen Lingquan has already become a traitor. He left the capital long ago.
So that is it. That is what he truly believes. My heart had long since calmed down. If we were both victims in our past life, then what wrong did our family of 3 do? If I hadn't seen with my own eyes that he never remarried in his life and witnessed him holding my old clothes, I would never have believed he had me in his heart. So, I decided to be bold for once. I reached out and clutched his sleeve. Husband. As soon as the word left my lips, the usually reserved man reacted like a wild cat whose tail had been stepped on.
Enough. Tang Qinzhi, to leave me. You're even willing to call me husband. Aren't you usually cold and aloof? To go see Shen Lingquan, you've thrown away all your pride.
Wenzhao rarely lost control in front of me, let alone showed such anger. Having lived a second life, I had long since shed my former shyness. I stood on my tiptoes and planted a quick kiss on his face. The man froze completely. Before he could explode, I said, "Isn't it only natural for me to call you husband?" Wenzhao's pupils widened. His mouth hung slightly open. His throat bobbed.
You.
I chuckled softly. I'm going to the kitchen to make some pastries. When Heng'er wakes up later, he'll want something tasty to eat. Just as I turned around, my wrist was gripped by him. Wenzhao looked at my face, trying to find a flaw in my expression. I knew his heart was in turmoil right now. That deeply buried affection and years of resentment were battling fiercely within him. After a long while, he finally let out a breath.
If you want to use poison, just harm me alone. Spare Heng'er. He is still too young.
It seemed that healing the rift of these past few years would not be a task accomplished in a single day. That day, for the first time, Wenzhao did not attend to state affairs. When the meat porridge was brought over, Wenzhao was leaning by Heng'er's bedside. He glanced at me briefly. Having made up his mind, without a word, he immediately picked up the jade bowl and quickly swallowed a bowlful. I asked lightly, "Husband, how is it? Is it poison?" Wenzhao looked away. Heng'er woke up. His fever had subsided a little, and he was more spirited. He stared at me without blinking. His eyes were filled with longing for his mother. My nose stung with emotion. I fed him the soup myself. Heng'er tentatively whispered,
Mother.
I smiled. I leaned close to his delicate cheek and kissed him. "Be a good boy. Eat well, so you can recover soon." The little one was stunned. Then, he couldn't help but beam with joy.
Mother, oh mother, it really is mother. Heng'er is not dreaming.
The little boy is much easier to coax than his father. With hugs and cuddles, he became very clingy. Mother and father, stay and sleep with Heng'er tonight. Wenzhao's expression tightened in an instant. Heng'er is about to cry.
Heng'er is sick. Can't father grant Heng'er this wish? Does Heng'er not count as the child father loves most? Could it be that father has other children outside?
Wenzhao's face turned dark.
Nonsense.
But I had already gotten into bed. Husband, let's go to sleep. Heng'er insisted.
Father, come up here quickly.
Wenzhao stiffened his body. His gaze swept toward me, then immediately looked away. I said, "Husband, Heng'er is still ill. Don't upset him. It will make him feel worse." Wenzhao reluctantly got into bed. He lay very straight, stiff and motionless. The little one lay between the two of us, and his illness seemed to fade away.
Mother, I want another hug.
I complied and kissed his cheek. Who knew the little rascal, who mostly inherited his father's wit, had so many mischievous ideas.
Mother, father didn't have a mother growing up. He wants a kiss too.
Shut up.
Seeing the man keep his eyes tightly shut, I also tactfully closed my eyes to rest. When I woke up the next day, I opened my eyes but didn't see Heng'er's chubby face. Instead, I bumped into Wenzhao's deep, dark eyes. I let out a startled cry and sat up with a jolt. Wenzhao calmly smoothed out his collar.
I don't care what your true intentions are, as long as you don't hurt Heng'er. Do as you please.
His meaning was, as long as Heng'er is left alone, I can do whatever I want. Wenzhao had already gotten out of bed. The black silk robe made his shoulders look broad and his legs long, while simultaneously feeling all the more oppressive.
You really didn't need to scream just now. I wasn't planning on doing anything to you.
Leaving that behind, he strode away. Wenzhao had headed to the palace early in the morning. Heng'er had already recovered quite a bit. He placed all his favorite toys in front of me.
Mother, these were all chosen for me by father. If you like them, mother, Heng'er will give them all to you.
The little one was using his own way to get close to me. Thinking back, I could kick myself for how I acted before. Heng'er, mother will never abandon you again. Father treats you well, and mother will certainly treat you well, too. Heng'er's little eyes darted around twice as he stared at my belly.
Grandmother says, if father and mother sleep in the same bed, they can make a little brother or sister. If I have a little brother or sister, mother will never want to leave. So since father was by mother's side last night, will there be a little brother or a little sister?
I froze. I couldn't really blame grandmother. It was my own failure to teach Heng'er properly. In both my lifetimes, this is the first time I've truly tried to be a mother. After midday, a troublesome guest arrived at the manor. My half-sister, Tang Wanru. In my previous life, she played her part too well, making me truly believe we were sisters with a deep bond. I'll just wait and see how things develop. Tang Wanru grabbed my hand enthusiastically.
Sister, you have truly suffered. The regent covers the sky with one hand, wreaking havoc on the imperial court. He is nothing but a jackal. If it weren't for him, you would have already married Master Shen.
Master Shen, she calls him so affectionately. Every word Tang Wanru spoke was an accusation against Wenzhao. She seized the opportunity to elevate Shen Lingchuan. In my past life, I was deceived and brainwashed by her, harboring deep misunderstandings about Wenzhao, which led to that incident at the Lotus Pond.
Sister, you are the only legitimate wife in the regent's mansion. I assume you have access to the prince's study, right? See if you can find the troop deployment map in there.
The main event has arrived. Sure, I'll give it a try. Tang Wanru was ecstatic.
Sister, with you there, enduring humiliation in the prince's mansion, you will surely help Master Shen achieve his great cause. When that time comes, you can return to Master Shen's embrace.
I sneered inwardly. In the past, Shen Lingchuan had me abducted to the battlefield. To protect me, Wenzhao dropped his weapon, and his shoulders were riddled with arrows. Seeing that I had lost my value as a pawn, just as Shen Lingchuan was about to drag me away, Tang Wanru stabbed me through the heart with her sword.
Sister, why does everyone dote on you? Go to hell. Once you're dead, Master Shen will be mine alone.
Tang Wanru really is a mad woman. For now, I'll play along with her. I will do exactly as you say, sister. As Tang Wanru was leaving, she slipped me a packet of powder.
This is a slow-acting poison. Sprinkle it into the regent's meals, and you can kill him without anyone ever knowing.
In my past life, I took the poison packet, but I never actually used it. This time, I accepted the packet again. After Tang Wanru left, I keep feeling a chill down my back, but I looked all around and couldn't find anything strange. In the prince's study, Wenzhao smashed the white jade cup he had just acquired with a single strike. To think he had braved the scorching heat to run half the street, specifically to handpick this white jade cup for that person. But upon returning to the manor, what was it that he heard?
My lord, please calm your anger. The madam is not worth this much from you.
Indeed, Wenzhao had heard everything. He had truly believed that woman had changed for his sake. Who knew? It was all just a pretense to survive. A surge of blood rushed up. Wenzhao couldn't help but spit out a mouthful of blood. Your Highness. Just then, the wooden door was knocked upon. Outside the door was that woman's voice. Husband, are you there? I've brought you some cooling tea. At this, Yingju was so angry his teeth chattered.
My lord, the madam is going too far. She has actually come to poison you. If nothing else, this servant will drink it for you.
Wenzhao pressed a palm to his chest and pulled out a silk cloth to wipe the red stain from his lips.
Get out.
Yingju vanished into the rafters in a flash, but didn't forget to mutter one last thing.
My lord, being a fool for love leads to an early grave.
Wenzhao curled the corner of his mouth and said toward the door.
Come in.
The door was pushed open. Wenzhao stared at the woman as she strolled inside. Years had passed, yet his love for her remained as it was when they first met. She was the bright moon that everyone in the capital longed for, and he too wanted to possess her. He had spent his life clawing his way to the top, long ago, losing any desire for worldly things. Yet, for some reason, the moment he saw Tang Qinzhi, his heart, which had been sealed for a century, began to ripple. Wenzhao's face darkened with a chilling gloom.
Cooling tea. How did you know there was fire in my chest?
The beauty blinked her bright eyes. She was always so innocent and pure. But Wenzhao knew. She was a poisonous flower that intoxicated everyone. The beauty looked rather awkward. I heard you had a nosebleed before entering the palace. Wenzhao gave a miserable laugh. He had a nosebleed.
Who caused it? Did he not know in his heart?
The beauty. My husband. Please. Drink it. Wenzhao stared at the cooling tea pushed to his lips. He closed his eyes. Even if it were a slow-acting poison, it wouldn't kill him in an instant. Then he shall swallow it. Wenzhao tilted his head and drank, but he left a small amount. Suddenly, a wicked thought crossed his mind. He pushed the jade cup he had just drunk from toward the beauty's lips.
How could I trouble you to go to such lengths for me, my lady? You should have some too, my lady.
He wanted to see
just how far this woman would go for Shen Lingchuan.
But he watched as the beauty took the cup and drank it immediately. Wenzhao was slightly stunned. As soon as she swallowed 2 mouthfuls, he snatched the jade cup back.
Enough. What exactly are you trying to do?
He truly wanted to strangle her, but the moment his hand touched her delicate, slender neck, he pulled back. Wenzhao smiled bitterly.
You may leave now. The same goes for what I said before. Poison me, all you want, but never harbor any evil intentions toward Heng'er.
At that moment, I stared intently at Wenzhao. Then I glanced at the cooling tea he had placed on the desk. Seeing him like this, I seemed to sense something unusual. My husband, you are suspicious of me.
Tang Qinzhi, you are still so devoted to Shen Lingchuan.
I realized something else then. It seemed that no matter how I tried to clarify things, I could not erase his hostility. So, a moment later, I took the jade cup and swallowed the remaining cooling tea in one gulp. Wenzhao roared.
Are you insane? The medicine is poisoned, yet you have no fear of death. For the sake of Shen Lingchuan, you really are willing to go to such lengths.
The man knocked the jade cup over with a violent strike. I looked up at him. Husband, what must I do for you to finally trust me? Wenzhao's eyes reflected my stubborn face. Right now, neither of us would yield. He was obstinate, and I became all the more persistent. A mouth is meant for communication, and misunderstandings must be cleared up. Wenzhao was clearly still furious. His dark eyes seemed to pierce right through me as he stared. He suddenly looked up toward the rafters.
Get out.
Before I could even regain my senses, I felt a shadow flash by in a blur. With the wooden window opening and closing, Yingju vanished without a trace. In an instant, I was pulled against Wenzhao's chest. His arms locked tightly around my waist. The man looked down. His voice nearly gritted through his teeth.
We are a married couple. You only need to soothe my anger. Why bother with this cooling soup?
I was horrified. Wenzhao seemed to be laughed at by his own anger.
Aren't you hoping for me to trust you? Very well. Consummate our marriage with me. Let me test your sincerity.
It is very hot. Could it be that you knew what you were holding was cooling soup? I even suspect that, just like years ago, he has been sabotaged. I understand his wariness. Years of neglect and indifference have long since trampled his pride. It is my fault. I was wrong. I should be the one to personally dispel his worries. While Wenzhao was studying me, I opened my arms and wrapped them around his neck. My second sister visited today. She did indeed give me a packet of medicine, but I never once put it into the cooling soup. Right now, let your husband see my sincerity. As I finished speaking, I stood on my tiptoes, but the contact I imagined did not happen. I opened my eyes wide, only to see Wenzhao turn his head away. My lips brushed against his ear instead. I saw the corners of his eyes turn red. He was on the verge of tears. Have I pushed him this far? Have I truly hurt him too deeply? Husband, why are you pulling away? Do you no longer wish to test my sincerity? Or is it that you are afraid? Provocation is indeed effective. Wenzhao is usually extremely composed, but now he is mostly controlled by his emotions. He finally met my gaze. In an instant, the world turned upside down. He lifted me onto the desk. With a sweep of his hand, paper, inkstones, and rare books were smashed across the floor. I caught the crimson in Wenzhao's eyes, carrying me along with them. A deep affection that was hard to fathom. After he could no longer restrain himself, I soothed him as if I were comforting Heng'er. Husband, trust me. My second sister and I were only playing a part. I will never let you down again. Soon, you will understand my plan. The room was in complete disarray, but fortunately, Heng'er came looking for us. Heng'er is banging on the door.
Father, mother. What are you doing in there? You've been in there for ages. Mother, why are you crying? Father, don't you dare be mean to mother. Where?
The two of us scrambled to clean up the mess. The door was pushed open. The servants working inside exchanged glances. Their faces were pale. Heng'er, oblivious to everything, saw my flushed face and leaned his little bottom against Wenzhao.
Father, hit me instead. Don't you dare hit mother.
Wenzhao rubbed his temples, a faint blush spreading across his handsome face. He met my eyes for a moment, then immediately looked away. Wenzhao picked up the little one, his voice still raspy, but filled with a hint of tenderness.
I didn't hit your mother, Heng'er.
Father is lying. I heard it clearly.
The situation was incredibly awkward. Fortunately, the powerful official knew how to control the room. After some coaxing, the three of us sat at the table for dinner. Only then did Heng'er settle down. At nightfall, Heng'er insisted on sleeping with me and Wenzhao again. After what happened in the study, Wenzhao had become much more agreeable. Once Heng'er was fast asleep, I lowered my voice, trying to reason with Wenzhao. As for what happened back then, I know you were a victim as well. I shouldn't have blamed you. My second sister is full of schemes. When she came to see me, I was merely playing along. Did you happen to overhear what I said to her? The man remained silent. I turned my head to look at him, only to see him slowly pull open his ink-colored silk robe, revealing his chest marked with faint, red scratches. He said with a sour tone,
You were really rough on me.
Seeing Wenzhao like this, deep in my heart, ripples of tenderness and pity could not help but stir. I blurted out, That is only because you were too. Wenzhao?
To what?
My voice was as light as a mosquito's hum. Wenzhao seemed to smile, but in an instant, he returned to his cold and heartless demeanor. He spoke as if discussing business, expressionless.
I will take your word for it for now. Are you still going to steal the troop map?
The moonlight flickered, shining in through the wooden window. Following my gaze, Wenzhao's features looked particularly stern. Of course I must steal it, but it cannot be the real troop map. Husband, do you dare to join forces with me? To lure Shen Lingtuan into the capital? And then wipe out all the rebels? I thought I had been sincere enough, but Wenzhao mocked me instead.
Are you hoping to see him? Since you can't escape the capital, you're trying to find a way to make him come back.
Heng'er stirred in my arms, nearly waking up. Under the hazy moonlight, Wenzhao's gaze was particularly scorching. I kept feeling that the fire he had in the study had not yet fully subsided. Looking into his eyes, with that bottomless darkness and obsession, my heart skipped a beat for no reason. I didn't know how to answer. The bedroom fell silent instantly. Heng'er was talking in his sleep.
Daddy, please don't hit Mommy.
Wenzhao and I were caught in an awkward spot and could only keep quiet, avoiding each other's eyes, while Heng'er is busy with his tutor. I speak with Wenzhao in private. During the Lantern Festival in a few days, I intend to visit the Tang estate. If all goes as expected, Shen Lingquan's men will surely try to approach me. At the mere mention of Shen Lingquan's name, Wenzhao immediately becomes guarded. The man's brows knit together sharply. He is holding his long sword, and in the next moment, with a cold, lethal strike, he hacks off a branch of the spring begonia, as if venting his anger. Wenzhao,
How do you know Shen Lingquan will send someone to approach you? You seem quite knowledgeable about him. Truly childhood sweethearts who grew up together. I heard that when you were 1 year old at your first birthday ceremony, you reached out and grabbed Shen Lingquan.
I grow anxious. My husband, can you please be serious for once? Wenzhao's dark brows arch sharply.
I am not being serious. If I were not being serious, would you still be standing here in one piece?
I am speechless. Why do I know Shen Lingquan will send someone to approach me? It is only because it happened exactly this way in my past life. He looks easy to deceive, but in truth, he is as stubborn as a mule. I have no choice, and can only soften my stance. Clutching my handkerchief, I step closer, and gently wipe the beads of sweat from my husband's cheek. Standing extremely close, I can smell the scent of cold bamboo on him. My husband, on the day I return to the Tang estate, you are welcome to have someone keep an eye on me. Then, whatever Shen Lingquan's intentions may be, you will be able to see them for yourself. Will you be willing to trust me then? Wenzhao does not answer. I take his silence as agreement. When the day finally arrives, Wenzhao actually shows up in person. He is disguised, dressed in the attire of a servant. Everything proceeds according to plan. As the carriage travels along Xuanwu Main Street, Tang Wanru intercepted the carriage. She feigned that our sisterly bond was excellent.
Sister, before we return to the Tang Manor, I will take you to see someone first. You will surely be delighted to see him.
At this moment, Tang Wanru still believed that my feelings for Shen Lingquan were as solid as gold. I immediately put on an excited expression, so as not to arouse Tang Wanru's suspicion. Is it him? That is wonderful. Changing my tone, I added, second sister, please lead me to him. Oh, by the way, I have an extra guard with me. Let him stay by my side. If there is any danger, he can help me escape in time. Tang Wanru glanced at Wenzhao outside the carriage. Seeing that the stranger looked ordinary and stern, she didn't think much of it. At this moment, Tang Wanru was only anxious to complete the task Shen Lingquan had assigned. Shen Lingquan had actually come in person. I gave Wenzhao a look, signaling him not to act impulsively. At this time, Wenzhao could have easily had him arrested, but if he were captured now, we would never draw out the conspirators behind him. I put on an act, pretending that I still had lingering feelings for Shen Lingquan. Shen Lingquan gripped my hands tightly.
Ah, gee. I have finally seen you again.
Has that villain harmed you? Memories of everything in the study flashed through my mind. No. Shen Lingquan seemed to dote on me excessively.
Ah, gee, don't hide it from me.
I know you haven't been living well. How did I not notice in my past life that Shen Lingquan was so arrogant and shallow? Tang Wanru was standing right there. She couldn't bear to see Shen Lingquan being intimate with me.
Your Highness, sister, you too. Finish what you have to say quickly. We cannot stay here long.
Shen Lingquan certainly couldn't afford to delay the main objective. He was brief and to the point. He said his only goal was to bewitch me. He told me to steal the military map and ordered me to poison Wenzhao. I humbly played along, waiting for brother Lingquan to come and fetch me.
Ah, gee, that child you bore with Wenzhao. You needn't concern yourself with him. In the future, we shall surely have many more children.
My Heng'er is by no means an insignificant child. I suppressed my nausea and nodded my head. The matter was considered settled. I saw Shen Lingquan Then I led Wenzhao for a walk around the Tang estate. Wenzhao remained silent the entire time, but his presence was imposing. His face seemed covered in a layer of frost. As soon as we returned to the regent's mansion, the man immediately hoisted me up and strode toward the inner chamber. He instructed the maid,
Bring a basin of water.
I couldn't fathom why Wenzhao was so angry until I watched him wipe my hands over and over again. Only then did I realize my wrist had been touched by Shen Lingquan. Wenzhao, are you perhaps jealous? The man froze. In the past, he certainly would have denied it, but perhaps because the ice between us had already broken, he was surprisingly candid instead.
That is right. I am jealous. Am I not allowed to be jealous? You are the wife I married with a grand procession, and you even bore me Heng'er. What has that Shen Lingquan ever done for you all these years? That year, after you and I fell into the lotus pond, he didn't even dare to stand up and defend you.
Seeing that Wenzhao was still taking it seriously, I kissed him on the cheek. trying to change the subject. Then let's stick to the plan and lure them into the trap. I'll be the bait, he roared.
No matter what you say, you still intend to return to his side, even though I had taken him to see Shen Lingchuan today.
The man still couldn't fully trust me. Helpless, I had no choice but to kiss him again. Wenzhao's expression softened slightly.
Tang Qinzhi, you cannot treat me this way.
I chuckled. Why not? Isn't it as you said? Am I not the wife you married with a grand procession? Wenzhao also broke his composure and laughed.
Do you think you can bewitch me like this? Can't I?
I watched as the corners of his mouth curled up again and again. A moment later, Wenzhao could no longer restrain himself. He rested his chin on my shoulder.
Do not lie to me. I beg you.
Please, never lie to me. The man's bloodshot eyes welled up with moisture. I felt an inexplicable ache in my heart and instinctively kissed away the remaining tears. Very well, I will not lie to you. Just as Wenzhao was about to lose himself in the moment, Heng'er started making a fuss outside the door again.
Father, mother, are you two bickering again? Father, don't you dare hit mother. I won't allow it.
The little one kept pounding on the door. Yingju had no choice but to try and persuade him.
Young master, the master and the mistress are not fighting. Please, stop making such a racket.
Heng'er, I don't believe you. Open the door. If you aren't fighting, why are there sounds coming from inside?
Yingju scratched his head in frustration. I just wanted to push Wenzhao away. He gave a helpless, bitter smile.
Don't move. I don't want to hold back. You go and handle Heng'er.
Having finally calmed the older one down, I then proceeded to coax the younger one. I spoke a few soothing words through the door, promising to make him sea cucumber soup. Heng'er, be a good boy. Go back for now, okay? I'll make you your favorite sea cucumber soup. How about that? The little one was finally at ease.
All right then. But father, you must not be mean to mother.
Over the next few days, Wenzhao seemed to have had a change of heart. Knowing full well I was just coaxing him, he took the opportunity to push his luck even further. Finally, the day of the plan arrived. I tucked the fake military map into my pouch, waiting quietly to be abducted. Wenzhao was still worried. He rubbed my fingertips, alternating between firm and gentle touches.
Let's change the plan.
I waved him off. My husband, only when Shen Lingchuan is completely toppled can the imperial court be at peace. Only then can we live our lives in peace. As long as he lives, there will always be a thorn in your heart. That thorn, I will be the one to pull it out. Wenzhao's face was etched with reluctance, but I had already figured out his weakness. I gave him a cold glare, and this fellow obediently played his part in my act. On this day, the regent's mansion deliberately relaxed its guard. Shen Lingquan's men easily took me away. Heng'er, unaware, stood in the courtyard wailing. Wenzhao pretended to be injured. I took one last look at the father and son, the big one and the small one, feeling a deep sense of heartache, just like in my past life. After I fell into Shen Lingquan's hands, I did not gain my freedom. He locked me away. When Tang Wanru came to see me, I knew Shen Lingquan was eavesdropping. In my previous life, I lost my composure and only knew how to complain. But now, I am perfectly rational, and I know exactly what I must do. Therefore, taking advantage of the moment, Tang Wanru dropped her facade and revealed her true colors. I decided to just expose the secret.
Sister, do you really think that His Highness would truly cherish someone like you? Your only purpose is to serve as a bargaining chip.
Tang Wanro giggled, thinking she had won. I sighed silently. The women of the Tang family are all breathtakingly beautiful, yet they all seem to inherit a stubborn, romantic obsession. Several of my great aunts threw their lives away for scoundrels. I too was incredibly foolish in my past life. Tang Wanru is still being deceived by Shen Lingquan to this day. Now, I understand deeply that being a lovesick fool is fatal.
Sister, why aren't you saying anything? Have you admitted defeat?
Second sister, the incident between me and the regent, was that a scheme of yours? Tang Wanru thought victory was within her grasp. She was getting carried away, speaking without restraint.
Sister, you finally learned the truth. Yes, it was me. The regent was fond of you. Didn't you notice that at all, sister? I brought the two of you together so that His Highness couldn't take you away. After all, in this entire capital, who would dare steal a wife from the regent? Oh, and by the way, that day, the regent carried you into the lotus pond, intending to sober you up, but he didn't anticipate just how potent the drug I gave you both was, how intense it was. Sister, I ruined your reputation and made you lose the one you loved. You must hate me to the core, right?
I smiled silently. At this moment, Shen Lingquan burst through the door.
Tang Wanyu, how dare you?
Tang Wenyu was startled, realizing she had been set up by me, but she quickly regained her composure.
Your Highness, things have reached this point. You must let go of my sister. After all, she hasn't been pure for a long time. She even bore a son for that man, surnamed Wen.
The next moment, Tang Wanyu was slapped across the face. Shen Lingquan was furious. You wretch.
Ah, Zhu is my fiancé. This is a disgrace to my name.
I sneered. Second sister, look, your highness is blaming you. Tang Wanyu tried to soften her tone. Shen Lingquan was clearly still in a rage.
Guards, drag the second Miss Tang out and lock her up.
Once only the two of us remained in the room, Shen Lingquan began his act of devotion again.
Ah, Shi, you have suffered so much these past few years, so you never betrayed me after all. You were framed by someone someone else.
I stared at him quietly. I have already given you the defense map. Can you let me go now? Shen Lingquan's eyes darted away.
Ah, Shu, for the sake of my grand cause, I have no choice but to sacrifice you. You are Wenzhao's weakness. Once I eliminate him, I will let you go.
I couldn't help but sigh. Even Shen Lingquan knew I was Wen Zhao's weakness. Why didn't I notice this in my past life? With the defense map in hand, Shen Lingquan led his armored troops, aggressively breaking through the city gates. With his forces at the walls, that day, I was bound and used as a hostage. Shen Lingquan claimed to be clearing the emperor's side, vowing to purge the treacherous officials.
Wenzhao, that scoundrel, holds the emperor hostage to command the lords. He deserves to die.
From within the crowd, someone shouted back.
Shen Lingquan is the one who slaughtered his own kin.
The late emperor and the crown prince both died by his blade.
The regent only stepped in to support the young imperial grandson, out of necessity. Amidst the clamor, the voices favoring Wenzhao grew even louder. This had been part of the plan all along. Shen Lingquan believed victory was within his grasp. He was already growing impatient.
I am the true, legitimate prince. The throne should have been mine.
Just as he prepared to order the assault, the sound of war drums suddenly erupted. Large numbers of soldiers poured out from all directions, encircling Shen Lingquan's elite armored troops, trapping them like fish in a barrel. At this moment, Shen Lingquan finally realized something was wrong. He slowly looked toward me. I offered a faint smile. The defense map was fake. You've fallen into a trap. You are now a bird in a cage. Shen Lingquan.
Aji, why did you deceive me? Don't you love me deeply? We were childhood sweethearts, betrothed since we were young.
I spat in disgust, but after my reputation was ruined, you immediately hooked up with my younger sister. It wasn't me you couldn't bear to lose. It was the Tang family's influence in the great Yin dynasty, and my value as a tool for your ambition. Shen Lingquan's eyes turned bloodshot. He leveled his long sword at me.
Aji, you truly shouldn't have deceived me like this.
Just as Shen Lingquan moved to harm me, Wenzhao, who had been lying in wait nearby, struck quickly. The sound of blades clashing rang in my ears. Shen Lingquan's arm was grazed by a sword strike, forcing him to let go. In the blink of an eye, Wenzhao pulled me into his arms. The next moment, he fired an arrow to signal the attack. The battle between the two sides erupted instantly. I don't know what Wenzhao was thinking, but at such a life or death moment, right in front of Shen Lingquan, he lowered his head and kissed me. Shen Lingquan.
What are you two doing? I'm not dead yet.
Wenzhao whistled a secret signal, and his steed galloped over like lightning. In an instant, Wenzhao lifted me onto the horse, and we sped away from the danger zone. His actions were truly efficient and decisive, as if he had practiced them many times. Having survived the ordeal, Wenzhao whispered softly.
Aji.
I replied, my husband, I am here. The fighting did not last very long. After Shen Lingquan was captured alive, Tang Wanru also came to surrender. Shen Lingquan refused to concede.
I am the eldest son of the late emperor. The throne should have been mine.
Wenzhao said coldly.
The late crown prince was virtuous and capable, caring for the people, a rare and wise ruler. Yet, you killed him. The young emperor is the late crown prince's orphan, and he is where the true will of the people lies.
Shen Lingquan's hypocrisy was laid bare.
Do you really think Zhouju? She adored me since she was young. She sewed robes for me and made pastries for me, and she even met me in secret under the moonlight.
Before Shen Lingquan could finish his sentence, Wenzhao ended him with a single stroke of his sword. I saw the hand Wenzhao used to hold his sword trembling. That damned Shen Lingquan. He is still causing me such trouble even in death. At that moment, Tang Wanru crawled over to Shen Lingquan's corpse, laughing and crying all at once.
Ah, ha ha ha. This is perfect. Now that you're dead, you belong to me. In life, you are mine, and in death, you are my ghost. I betrayed my own morals for you, hurt my own family, lost my innocence, and even sold out my own sister. How dare you treat me with such indifference? Shen Lingquan, you shouldn't have treated me that way.
I looked at the crazed Tang Wanru. Second sister, don't you understand yet? You were nothing more than a pawn to Shen Lingquan. Tang Wanru wiped her tears away fiercely.
But, sister, everything that should have been yours. I wanted to keep it all for myself.
She suddenly looked at Wenzhao, the sorrow in her eyes turning into a crazed greed.
Now that you've fallen for the regent, I want to have him too.
Before she could finish her words, I ended her life with a single strike. Looking at Tang Wanru and Shen Lingquan lying on the ground, I immediately issued an order. Guards, bury them both in the same grave. Let them never be separated for all eternity, and keep them from tormenting anyone else. Perhaps because my methods were too decisive, Wenzhao didn't feel jealous because of Shen Lingquan's words. Instead, he turned to comfort me, speaking in a rare, gentle tone.
All right, stop fussing. It is all over now.
Shen Lingquan's 80,000 iron cavalry were all returned to the imperial court. The great Yin returned to peace. Wenzhao had indeed been quite unrestrained these past few days. I offered some well-meaning advice. You're already 28. You're not young anymore. You shouldn't be so indulgent all the time. Wenzhao was provoked by these words.
Gee. You owe me so many years, and they must all be made up for.
Whenever Heng'er came to disturb us, Wenzhao would come up with new ways to send him away.
Heng'er, Don't be a nuisance. Don't you want a younger brother or sister?
Several years later, 10-year-old Heng'er looked at his mischievous younger sibling, furrowing his brow in deep thought. Maybe younger siblings aren't really necessary after all. In this lifetime, Heng'er did not go astray. He married a suitable young lady as his virtuous wife. The couple treated each other with mutual respect. Having gained experience from looking after his younger siblings, Heng'er himself had long since become a good father. Many years later, Wenzhao handed over his power, and we began living as an ordinary couple. I loved nothing more than leaning against him, sipping tea and watching the flowers. One night, I had a dream. In the dream, I saw scenes from my previous life. Wenzhao had grown old and frail. He knelt on a straw mat in the Buddha hall and pulled a familiar object from his robes. It was my personal jewelry, its surface emitting a faint, shimmering glow, as if a shadow were circling within it. The master beside him sighed.
Amitabha, you have kept the lady's soul in this world for many years by force. The bond between you two is too deep, but this is a blessing, and it is now complete. Since that is the case, this humble monk is willing to grant you the chance to start over.
Wenzhao's tears broke like a dam, and he bowed his head deeply.
May the Bodhisattva protect us. I thank you, Master.